Unleash your genius. Practical strategies to take full advantage of your brain's incredible potential. Now, you are a genius. Yes, you. Yeah, you just don't know it yet. Imagine what would happen if you could unleash your inner genius. What would be different? What would be better? What would be exciting? What would your future be like? What could you accomplish? Now, see if you can figure out who this genius is. He didn't start talking until age 4. He didn't learn to read until age 7. He nearly flunked out of high school. He graduated at the bottom of his college class. He worked as a lowly clerk in a patent office. He spent 10 years formulating the theory of relativity. Now, you guessed it, Albert Einstein. Now, see if you can name this genius. His teachers called him an idiot. He was called a lazy fool who wouldn't amount to anything. He dropped out of high school and had to be taught at home by his mother. He failed 10,000 times to create the electric light bulb. Now, it's said that he had no armies into battle. He conquered no countries. He enslaved no peoples. Nonetheless, he exerted a degree of power the magnitude of which no warrior ever dreamed. His name still commands a respect as sweeping in scope as worldwide as that of any other mortal, a devotion rooted deep in human gratitude and untainted by the bias that is often associated with race, color, politics, and religion. Yes, you guessed it. That was Thomas Edison. Now you can learn to unleash your genius. The first thing we're going to talk about is the fact that you have 3 brains. Yes, 3 brains. You have the primitive brain, you have a middle brain, and you have a neocortex. Now, these 3 brains have different functions. Learning takes place mainly in the neocortex, emotion takes place in that limbic system, and safety takes place in the brain stem. So survival and fear are controlled by that reptilian brain. Emotions and pleasure, seeking pleasure and avoiding pain, controlled by your mammal brain. And your rational thinking, logic and rational thinking is done by the neocortex. Now, your brain was designed perfectly to enable you to learn and achieve anything that you want. Now, the primitive brain, also called the reptilian brain, is mainly concerned with survival, breathing, instincts, sense of territory. And this middle brain then keeps you alive. Now, the middle brain, the mammalian brain, is control of your emotions, connections, rewards, and long-term memory, and also controls sensory input. And then finally, the neocortex is your thinking brain. It is concerned with thinking and planning and deciding and language, higher functions, very rational thinking. So these 3 brains that you have work together to make you an incredible genius. Now, one thing, your brain makes connections. The way your brain learns is by connecting something you already know with something you want to learn. And you have 100 billion neurons, brain cells, in your brain. You have the ability to make 100 trillion connections. Therefore, the brain's capacity is virtually unlimited. The more connections you make, the more intelligent you become. And so there's really no limit to how much you can learn and how smart you can become. The more you use your brain, the smarter you become. The more connections you make, the more you become a genius. Now, your brain is limitless. Your brain has more neurons than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And your brain can make more connections than all the known stars in the universe. It would take a supercomputer the size of the Sears Tower to equal the computing power of your brain. It would take Lake Michigan to keep it cool. So you are a genius. You just don't know it yet. You need to improve. You don't need to improve your brain. You don't need a new brain. You don't need to change anything physically about your brain. Your brain is perfect. Your brain is created the way it needs to be. What you need to do is you need to learn how to use your brain properly to unleash your genius. Now imagine what would happen if you could unleash that inner genius. What would be different? What would be better in your life? What would be more exciting? What would your future be like? And what could you accomplish? Now, your brain has two hemispheres, a right brain and a left brain. And these two hemispheres, these two parts of your brain, are totally different. They do different things. They respond differently. They function differently. Your left brain is more concerned about analysis, and your right brain more with creativity. Your left brain is concerned about pattern recognition. It's very detailed oriented. It's reality based. It's sequential. It's analytical. It's very practical. It's very cautious. It's rational. It plans. It wants stability. It wants order. It wants to control. It wants to be very, very logical. The right brain, though, is very emotional. It has emotional intelligence, social intelligence, holistic thinking, compassion, imagination, judgment, perception. It wants to take risks. It can reason and be more creative. It wants to synthesize things. It's very empathic, and it has intuition and thinks about things that the left brain could never understand. Now, the left brain controls the right side of your body, and the right brain controls the left side of your body. The left brain is concerned about numbers and math, written language, spoken language, objectivity, analytical thinking, logic, and reasoning. But your right brain is more concerned with the 3D real world, music and art, intuition, creativity, imagination. It's more subjective. It wants to synthesize everything, much more emotional, and is very good at facial recognition. Now, an important part of your brain is the corpus callosum. And that's the area between the two hemispheres. You have your left brain and your right brain, and in between, there's this massive part of the brain that connects the left brain with the right brain. Now, the corpus callosum has the more connections you can make between your left brain and your right brain, the more intelligent you become. When Einstein died, they took his brain and they studied it, and his corpus callosum was massive. He had made billions of connections between his left brain and right brain. So what you want to do to become intelligent, to become a genius, to unleash that genius, you want to make as many connections between the left brain and the right brain. And these connections are made between the two hemispheres as you do thinking that requires both sides of your brain at the same time. If you only do logical thinking, you're going to develop your left side of the brain. If you only do creative thinking or emotional or artistic, you're going to develop your right side of your brain. But if you can do both of those at the same time, then you make multiple connections between the two sides of the brain. And the more you do that, the more intelligent you become. Now, playing music is probably the best way to increase your intelligence because it requires you to use every part of your brain simultaneously. Take a look at this. When your brain's at rest, it's relatively calm. But when your brain is reacting to music, nearly every part of your brain is excited. It's on fire. It's working. It's being stimulated. And you can see that on the picture on the right, where all the red areas of your brain are highly activated. Now, the two hemispheres of your brain need to work together, and you tend to use one side more than the other. And one of the things you want to do is you want to learn which side of the brain is your dominant side. Some people are very logical, they're very good at math, maybe they like to read. Other people are more emotional, they're more creative, and they use the right side of the brain more. You want to know which side of the brain you're using more. But you also have to learn how to use both sides equally. And if you are a left brain person, you want to do things that develop your right brain. If you're a right brain person, you also want to do things that develop your left brain. And you want to do things that use your left and right brain at the same time, making those connections so your brain functions holistically. So right brain people tend to learn off of emotions. That's why the most memorable teachers are very enthusiastic. Whereas left brain people tend to do well in structured learning environments, but they're not as successful with creative, spontaneous, and impromptu situations. So when you learn a song, or you sing a song, or you play a song, both sides of your brain are working at the same time, right? The left is listening to the words, or maybe speaking the words, you're singing the words. Well, your right brain is listening to the melody and the creative aspects of it. Public education is mainly designed for left brain thinkers, for linear thinkers. Those who are more right-brained or global thinkers tend to get lower grades, not because you're stupid, not because you're not smart, but because the system isn't built to keep you interested and keep you engaged. And so you need to find a way to learn that will capitalize on the strengths of your dominant brain. If you're right-brained, you want to capitalize and be creative, right? Be emotional. If you're left-brained, you want to capitalize, work on numbers, work on thinking, work on logic. But at the same time, if you want to become a genius, you have to develop both sides of your brain and get them to work together so that you can unleash the full potential of your brain. Now you have 5 modes of learning, 5 different ways to process data. You have sight, you use your eyes. You have touch, you use your hands or your body. You have hearing, you're using your ears. You have your taste, your tongue is your tasting things. And you have your nose, you're smelling. And your body uses these 5 senses to interact with the world. Now, you tend to rely on one of these senses more than the others in order to learn. Some people focus on the eyes and they learn visually. And they do very well by reading or seeing visuals, watching movies, watching videos. And they're very visual in the way that they learn. Other people learn by hearing, right? They hear by listening to the teacher, by listening to lectures, by listening to the book being read. And so they're very auditory in their learning. Others are more, learn more through touching, by doing, feeling. They're very kinesthetic. They have to act. They need to feel the object. They need to build the model. They need to act out what they're learning, and they learn by doing. Now, some people learn by taste. If you're a baker or you're a wine tester, definitely you want to develop your taste or your smell, right? So, but mainly when you're in school, you're using your eyes, your ears, and your hands. You're kinesthetic, working out things, your auditory, your listening things, or your visual, you're seeing things. And so you tend to rely on one of those more than the others. So if you're a visual person, you might have a hard time learning by lectures. If you're an auditory person, you might have a harder time learning by reading. If you're a kinesthetic person, you're out of luck because you're wiggling in your seat. You want to do things, but you got to sit down, shut up, and listen. But you need to be out there doing things mechanically, working with your hands, learning by doing. So you tend to use one of your five senses more than the others. And you need to capitalize on the strengths of your dominant sense. So if you're a visual person, learn visually, right? Make sure that you have a lot of visual input. If you're an auditory learner, make sure that you have auditory ways. So maybe you have to read the book out loud or listen to books on tape or listen to the lecture. If you're a kinesthetic person and you learn by touch and by doing, make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to build models and act out and use your body, use your kinesthetic sense to learn the material. So capitalize on your strengths. But you also want to learn how to use the other modes. So if you're an auditory person, you want to develop your visual and your kinesthetic. If you're a visual person, you want to develop your auditory and your kinesthetic. If you're kinesthetic, you have to work really, really hard to develop your visual and your auditory learning. Otherwise, you're going to struggle a lot in school. So develop the other modes so you can increase your potential for learning exponentially. If you use your eyes and your ears at the same time, you're going to learn more. If you use your eyes, ears, and hands, you're going to learn even more. So there's going to be these 5 ways to process your data. And the more senses you use when you study, the more likely you remember the material. So if you're going to learn something, you want to see it, you want to hear it, you want to write it, you want to do it. If you can get all 3 engaged, then you're going to learn more quickly and you remember the material better. And then the more intense the sensory input is, the more quickly it will be encoded, the more firmly that information will be embedded into your long-term memory, and you will learn more quickly and remember much longer. So you want to have intense sensory input as well, not lazy, bland. You want to be fully engaged. And this chart here really helps you understand that if you simply just read something, you're only going to remember 10% of it. But if you read it and hear it, maybe you're reading it out loud or you're listening to the book on tape while you're reading, you'll remember 20% of what you hear. Now, if you view images and you're watching videos along when you're reading, you're going to remember 30% of what you see, read, and hear. Now, if you add exhibits and sites and you watch demonstrations and things are being performed in front of you, 50%, you're going to remember 50% of that. And if you can actually get in there and get your hands on and you're doing it, you're in a workshop, you're designing things, you're collaborating together, you're building things, you're going to remember 70% of what you do. And if you can simulate and put that information into practice, make a model or experience the lesson, you can design to perform a presentation or you teach the material to someone else or you do the material, you'll remember 90%. So if you're just reading, you're wasting your time. You want to become more fully engaged. Use all of your senses as much as possible. And the more you're engaged, all 5 of your senses, the more you'll remember, the longer you'll remember it, and the more deeply you will learn that material. So when you're learning vocabulary, for instance, look at the word, see it, sound the word out, say it, and then write it out by hand. So you got your visual, your eyes were engaged, you got your ears, your auditory sense was engaged, and your kinesthetic was engaged. You're touching, you're doing it. And that's the best way to learn vocabulary, to see it, to hear it, to write it. If you're listening to a lecture, look at the visuals, right? Look at the overheads. Repeat the lecture in your head so you can hear the teacher and you can hear yourself, and then write down keywords and key ideas. By hand is better because you're engaging your kinesthetic sense. So the more senses that you can use, the faster you're going to learn, the more you're going to remember. When you're reading a book, visualize what you're reading, right? Make a mental movie that's very vivid and full of details, using all 5 of your senses. See the action, hear the action, feel the action, smell it, taste it. Be fully engaged in the book. And you'll remember the book, you'll understand the book. Your comprehension will go up, your retention will go way up. When you're studying for an exam, read your notes out loud. Don't just read them in your head, but actually read them out. Visualize the information. See it in your head. Draw diagrams, make charts, mind map by hand using colors and shapes and artwork. And as you study, you're going to master that material. It's going to be encoded in your brain much more deeply. And you're going to remember that material and understand it much better. Now you have 10 intelligences. You have a verbal linguistic intelligence. You use language. You have a mathematical and logical intelligence, numbers and logical representations. You have visual and spatial intelligence. You can see things and you can move around in a spatial 3D environment. You have a musical intelligence. You have a sense of music and rhythm and rhyme that can enable you to learn music. You have a bodily kinesthetic intelligence. You learn doing things. Sports athletes are very bodily or kinesthetically intelligent. You have an emotional intelligence, an intrapersonal intelligence. You know what's going on inside of your body and of your brain and of your emotions. And you have a social intelligence. You can know what's going on in other people, in groups around you, very interpersonal. You can see and understand what's happening around you. There's also a natural or holistic intelligence. As you go into nature, you see everything working together as a whole, not simply parts, but everything is a system. You have a holistic or naturalistic intelligence. You also have an existential or a spiritual intelligence. You sense something beyond. There's an inner sense that there is a divine being, that there is a spiritual world. And you have that existential spiritual intelligence that enables you to interact on that level. And then you have a creative and innovative intelligence where you can create and do things that have never been done before. So you want to understand that you have 10 different ways of processing your information in the world, of interacting with the world. Now, sometimes some people are very verbal in linguistics. They learn a lot by talking or by reading. Other people learn a lot by math and logical reasoning. Some people are very good kinesthetically, and they learn by doing and getting their body involved, especially sports people. Some people are very smart emotionally. They know how they feel. They know what emotions they're feeling. Some people are very socially intelligent. They know what other people are feeling, and they can motivate and they can influence other people to do things. Some people are very spiritually intelligent. They're very in tune to the universe or to God or to that spiritual sense. Some people are very creative intelligent, right? They can create things, they can do things. Some people are very good with music. But what you want to do is you want to start developing all 10 of your intelligences. Again, use the intelligences that you're good at. So if you're good at verbal, make sure you read and listen. If you're good at math, make sure that you're making numbers or charts and graphs. If you're good at visual, make sure you're drawing pictures and making graphic representations. If you're emotionally intelligent, make sure you're working with understanding the emotional implications of what you're learning. What does it mean to me? If you're socially intelligent, learn with other people. Learn as a group. If you have natural holistic intelligence, see the big picture. See how everything fits together. Use your musical. Put things to music. Make rhymes, make rhythms, And you can actually learn things by making ditties or songs like the ABC song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right? And you make that song and you can memorize the alphabet or some other materials. Or bodily, get in there and do things and make things happen. So you want to develop all 10 of these intelligences. And the more of these intelligences that you can bring to bear in your learning, the faster you will learn, the deeper you will learn, and the longer you'll retain that information. So use your 10 intelligences. Now, schools have tended to focus on linguistic and mathematical intelligence. Now, these are very, very important. In the real world, you have to be able to read, you have to be able to think logically. But creative and holistic and emotional and social intelligence are often more important in the real world. Right? It's the A and B students are working for the C students. Because why? The C students have the social and emotional intelligence to build a business, and then they hire the smart people to do the work. Right? So to be successful in the real world, you need more than linguistic and mathematical intelligence. You can only go so far. You need to have social intelligence, emotional intelligence. You need to have creativity, right? You need to see the big picture. You need to be able to do things. You also need to learn how to capitalize on the strengths of your dominant intelligence while developing all these other intelligences in order to increase your learning potential exponentially. If you use one intelligence, you're doing great. If you use two, you double that. You use three, you triple it. And so the more intelligences you use, the deeper you're learning, the faster you learn, the more likely you'll remember that information. Now, you can actually program your brain. Your brain is like a computer. And you can program your brain to do what you want it to do. Now, people are programming your brain every single day. You turn on the TV, you look on the internet, you go on TikTok, or you go on Instagram. People are programming you all the time. One of the things you want to do as a genius is you want to learn how to program your own brain yourself so that it does what you want it to do, not what someone else wants to do. So you can control your brain. You can program it to do what you want it to do. Most people don't realize this, so they usually program themselves to fail, or they let other people program their brain for them. So you need to learn how to program your brain effectively so you can learn effortlessly and succeed in school and in life. Now, your brain is always making connections, right? It's always making connections between neurons. Everything that you're doing, brain is making connections. And oftentimes you're learning just naturally. Your brain is making connections as you're in school, as you're reading, as you're doing things, right? So you already making connections between what you already know and what you want to remember. Your brain's doing that all the time. Takes that new information, plugs it into a neuron that is already there, has information you already have. And your brain's doing that all the time. But you can learn to do that on purpose, right? You can make these connections deliberately. You can say, I want this information connected to this information in your brain, and you can make that happen. It doesn't have to happen by chance. It doesn't have to happen haphazardly. You can determine which connections your brain is making. So you can actually program your brain so that you think and feel and act the way you want to think and feel and act. Now, an important part of your brain is called the reticular activating system, the RAS for short. Now, the RAS controls what you pay attention to. Now, you're bombarded with thousands of different stimuli every minute of your life. The temperature in the room, the sounds in the room, the feelings in your stomach, right? The pain that you have in your back, what your teacher is saying, what you're reading. You're being bombarded with all this different stimuli. Now, how does your brain know which information to pay attention to, which information not to pay attention to? Well, that's where the RAS comes in. The RAS, the reticular activating system, filters all this sensory input and prioritizes it automatically. Right? So you're listening to the teacher and your brain goes, this is what's important, and you're listening to the lecture and you're taking notes and you're hearing the teacher. But then all the noise that's in the hallway going on around you just kind of filters out. The birds singing outside and the planes flying over, the cars driving in the street just kind of seem to disappear, and you're focused and your brain is fully engaged in what the teacher is lecturing on. But then maybe you hear your name said in the hallway by your mom. Bam! Your brain suddenly switches attention because your reticular activating system goes, hey, that's important. That's more important than what the teacher's saying. And then your brain will focus on that. Sometimes we program our RAS ineffectively, and we tend to focus maybe on what the kids are gossiping next to us, and that's more interesting than what the teacher's lecturing. And so our RAS can have us focus on things that aren't important and aren't helping us move forward. But you can actually program your reticular activating system to pay attention to what's important to you. So look I want to pay attention to this, and you can program your RAS to pay attention to that and not something else. And if you can learn to program your RAS, that will greatly increase the effectiveness of your studying and learning. Now, you got to program your RAS carefully, because if you program it incorrectly, it will pay attention to what you programmed it to, not what you thought you meant to program it to. For example, if you want to focus on everything that's red, but you tell your RAS to focus on what's blue, you're going to see what's blue, you're not going to see what's red. So if you misprogram your RAS, you may end up missing important information. So it's really important that you learn how to do that correctly. And the way that you program your RAS is by asking it questions. Questions activate your RAS. Now, sometimes your teacher's lecturing, and the question you go is like, why is this so boring? That's the question. You've activated your RAS, and you go, yeah, the teacher's dumb, the teacher's stupid, this is a boring subject, this isn't important, I'll never use this again, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. And so after the lecture, your friends say, hey, what did the teacher talk? I don't know. Why? Because you weren't paying attention. Why weren't you paying attention? You programmed your RAS with the question, why is this so boring? Why do I have to learn this? And your brain goes, I guess I don't have to. And it paid attention to something else. So you programmed your RAS not to pay attention to the lecture. So the questions that you ask are very, very powerful because they are what activate your RAS. So you want to make sure you ask the right questions. In fact, you want to ask more than one question. You want to ask several questions in succession, right? And so learning to ask the right questions will activate your RAS to pay attention to what is most important. And what you focus on then is what you'll learn and what you'll remember. But if you read or you study aimlessly without activating your RAS properly, you're basically wasting your time because your brain is paying attention to things other than what you're trying to learn. So make your purpose very clear, make it very concise, make it positive, make it accurate. Tell your RAS, this is what I want to learn, by asking it the right questions. Now, your brain is an electronic device. It runs on electricity, and it has electric waves, right? And your brain learns best when it's running at 60 cycles per minute, or 1 cycle per second. And so your brain can run faster than that, your brain can run slower than that. And so as your brain can come down to what we call the theta brainwave state, 60 cycles per second, is when you'll be the most creative, the most attentive, the most alert, and you will learn the fastest. You'll learn most quickly, you'll learn most deeply if you can get your brain down to 60 cycles per second. And we'll talk later about how you can use Baroque music To do that, if you know anything about classical music, there's a type of music called Baroque music. I'll play a piece for you. And if you listen to that Baroque music, you can learn how to synchronize your brain, because Baroque music, the beat is 1 beat per second, 60 cycles, 1 beat per second. And you can actually train your brain to think at that optimal learning state. So even studying while listening to Baroque music will actually help you learn more quickly. It will increase your brain's ability to learn and remember. So here's a chart. Up when your brain is running like crazy, right? You're excited and you're maybe afraid, or maybe you're kind of fearful. Your brain's running up there at the gamma state, and you're thinking, and your brain's like running like a. Now you need to do certain thinking at that level, right? You have heightened perception. Maybe you can do some problem solving. You do some cognitive processing, but it's hard to learn new information at that stage. If you can slow your brain down to the beta stage, now you're awake, you're conscious, you're thinking a little more clearly, right? And now you can kind of process things a little bit. Your brain is slowed down. You're not in that fear or excited state. If you can get down into the alpha state, right, you are becoming physically and mentally relaxed. You feel good. Right? Now you can kind of start to daydream. Get a little slower, down to 4 to 8 hertz, 60 cycles per second, 1 beat per second. Now you're at the creativity level. And this is where you begin to dream. You ever daydream? You're probably down there in the theta state. Your brain starts creating visualization in dreams while you're still awake. You're dreaming while you're awake. And you want to be able to harness that state. If you can get your brain down to 60 cycles per second, 60 cycles per minute, 1 cycle per second, the theta state, what's going to happen is you're much more creative. You visualize things much more clearly, much more able to take in new information and to remember it and to process it. So you want to be able to get down to that theta state without falling asleep. And anytime that you read or study or even listen to lectures, take an exam, you want to get as close to that theta state as possible, and you'll be in an optimal learning state. So here's now you can increase your IQ. Your IQ is not set. Like we saw with Einstein. Einstein wasn't the brightest kid, nearly flunked out of school, yet we think of him as a genius. Even Thomas Edison, remember how he struggled, couldn't learn, thought he was stupid, thought he would never amount to anything, yet he became one of the most prolific inventors in American history. So your IQ is not set. You can strengthen, you can develop, you can increase your IQ. And one thing is the fact that your brain never forgets. Now you say, oh yeah, my brain forgets. No, it never forgets. Everything you have ever experienced in your whole life is stored permanently in your brain. It's there. Now sometimes you can have some brain damage, maybe it'll get done, and they're finding out the brain does maybe rewrite things, but usually that information is locked in for the rest of your life. Now, it's not going to remember everything because it's only going to remember what your RAS, your reticular activating system, said was important. So your RAS is going to have that important information encoded so it's easy to find, easy to remember. Things that were outside its concern, that were not important, are still stored in your brain, but they're not encoded in a way that they're easy to find. And that's why you say, well, I forgot. Well, you didn't forget. You just never encoded it properly so that it was easy to find. So the problem is not that you lose information, but that you didn't store it properly in a way that was easy to retrieve it when it's needed. So the key is not getting a better brain. It's not making your brain better. It's learning how to use your brain properly. Once you learn how to use how your brain stores information, then you can study and learn and memorize in a way that's actually easy and fun, right? Almost effortless, because it's the way your brain was programmed to learn. If you can learn how to do that, learning becomes fun, it becomes exciting, it becomes easy. And then you begin to recall everything that you learned. Now you can increase your IQ. Right? The Stanford Brain Institute said the average person gets by with about 2% of his or her mental potential. You're only using 2% of your brain. Imagine if you could use 5%, if you could increase that. I mean, that would increase your potential incredibly, simply by increasing how much of your brain is you're using. The more you use your brain, the easier it is to learn. It's like a muscle. The more you exercise a muscle, the stronger that muscle gets, the easier it becomes to do that movement. Same way with your brain. The more you use your brain correctly, the easier it becomes to learn and to process information. It's like a muscle. You can train your brain to learn easily and quickly. You are essentially the architect of your own brain. You are creating your brain. Whether you realize it or not, whether you're doing it intelligently or not, whether you're doing it in an effective way or an ineffective way, you are the architect of your brain. And they've been finding studies that your brain's capacity does not decline as you get old. If you use your brain properly, your brain keeps functioning all the way into your old age. Your brain has been designed to learn. It's an incredible learning device. It learns automatically. It learns without effort. But when you want to learn things that you have to learn, then it becomes hard because you're thinking, I don't want to learn that. I want to learn something else. So you have to learn how to control your brain so that it wants to learn what you want it to learn. It's designed to learn. If you can just get it to focus on what you want it to focus on, get that RAS focusing on the right things, your brain will learn naturally and effortlessly and easily. You can learn anything you need to learn in order to become what you want to be. You can learn it. Anybody can learn whatever they want. Learning how to learn then is the most important thing you'll ever learn, because it becomes the key to unlocking the door for everything else in your life. It opens up all the other possibilities for you. You can learn better. You can learn faster. You can learn easier if you figure out how your brain functions and how it learns. If you can learn the way your brain was programmed and designed to learn, then you can learn and study in a way that is most effective for you. So your brain's been designed to learn, right? Your intelligence is not fixed. The more you learn, the smarter you get. And the more you learn, the easier it is to learn more information, right? To earn more, you need to learn more. And because there's no limit to how much you can learn, there's no limit to how much you can earn. You can achieve any goal. You can solve any problem if you learn to use your brain properly. Acquiring the skill that you need through learning, you can solve any problem. You can achieve any goal. Now, think about when you were a child. When you were young, you learned quickly and easily. You just naturally learned. You didn't sit down and say, I'm going to learn how to walk. I'm going to take a course in walking. I'm going to take a course in English language or whatever language you learned as a child, right? You learn to walk, you learn to talk, you learn to dance, you learn to tie your shoes, you learn to ride a bike, you learn to play games. Really, without a lot of conscious effort, you just did it, right? Yeah, I remember you remember struggling to tie your shoe, but you eventually got it, right? You learn language just by using it and learning and talking, and your parents correcting you and your friends, and you're spending time out there. You just learn language. You didn't sit down and study language. You just learned it naturally. Now, over 80% of children up to the age of 6 are eager to learn, right? You go to school, you go to kindergarten, you go to first grade, and you are like stoked. I want to learn. This is going to be so incredible. And learning's fun. Learning is pleasurable. But something happens, right? By the time you're age 18, 80% of kids age 18, right, 8 to 18, hate school. Learning is boring, right? It's stressful, it's hard, it's not fun. What happened? Did you suddenly become stupid from age 6 to age 8? No. The problem is not with you. The problem is with the system. The system is not designed for you to learn the way you were designed to learn. You naturally learned when you were a child. It was easy for you to learn as a child, right? But the public education system is designed for about 20% of the students, right? Those who are visual, those who are auditory, those who have linguistic intelligence, and those who have mathematical intelligence, right? The other 80% struggle. You're bored, you're frustrated, confused, you're stressed out, because the system's not designed to teach you the way that you were designed to learn. And so what you want to do is you're stuck in the system, you have to learn how to learn for yourself. You have to overcome these obstacles to learning and learn how to use your brain in an effective, enjoyable way. And then you begin to use your schooling. Yeah, that's one aspect of my education. But I'm going to learn the materials this way on my own because this is the way I learn effectively, easily, enjoyably. So one of the things you want to do is you want to learn how to learn the way that you were designed to learn, and then design your own learning program so that you love learning, you love reading, you love studying, you love learning new information, and you do it naturally, you do it easily and effectively. So there's nothing wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with your brain. You simply haven't been taught how to unleash your genius. Now you say, well, why do I struggle to learn then? Well, there's some reasons for that. Part of it is you have some learned helplessness, right? You failed a couple of times. You tried to do something and you failed. You tried to do it again, you failed. And you said, I can't do that, right? Maybe you just can't do math. You tried 2 plus 2 is, I don't know what it is. It's 4. Oh, yeah, right, it's 4. Okay, what's 2 plus 2? I don't remember. It's 4. Oh, I'm not good at math. And now you've learned helplessness. I'm not good at math. You've told your brain, you programmed your brain, I can't do math. So when you have a math problem, it goes, oh yeah, I can't do this. And you've learned to be helpless. You learned that you can't learn that. So you've programmed your brain that, or someone else programmed your brain early on, usually through failure, that you can't do something. Maybe you started too young. Your brain wasn't ready yet to learn math. Maybe you just needed a little more time to learn math. Maybe you were interested in something else at the time and you would have been interested in math a year later. You don't know. But because you were forced to learn math before you were ready to learn math, before you wanted to learn math, you can't learn math. And now you've got this learned helplessness. I can't learn math, or I can't read, or I can't play basketball, or I can't. Right? And you've had this learned helplessness, and that becomes a block. And it's very, very difficult for you to get over that. And we can find ways to break through that learned helplessness. Saying, well, there is a way to learn quickly and easily, but oftentimes you need someone else to help you do that. It's not something you're going to find on your own, right? You need someone to mentor you, to train you, to teach you. Hey, don't do that, do this. Hey, don't do that, do this. Here's how you do it this way. A lot of times school just assumes that you're going to learn. And you're thrown in the deep end. Here's the material, learn the material, and you struggle and you can't figure it out. And the system keeps moving on. And you're struggling and you just got to move along with the system. And you're always behind. You're always struggling to catch up. And learning becomes a very difficult, tedious, boring, stressful experience. But if you learn how to learn properly and quickly, someone helps you along the way, then you can overcome that and you can actually be in the front enjoying the process. So you have to learn how to learn and study differently than what you're doing if you want to get different results. If you keep studying the way that you're studying, you're going to keep getting the same results that you're getting. If you keep trying to learn the way you're learning now, you're always going to be frustrated. You're always going to keep on learning. So if you want to stop being frustrated, you want to get better results, you have to do something different. You have to learn differently than the way you're trying to learn and study now. And that's why this course is important. So there's some keys to academic success. First of all, you have to learn how to learn, right? You have to learn how to put yourself in this optimal learning state before you study anything. If you're up here and your brain's going like that, you're not going to learn anything. You're wasting your time. So one of the first things you have to do, you have to learn how to slow your brain down so that you're in that optimal learning state. You also need to learn how to install beliefs and attitudes that support successful learning, right? You have that learning, I can't learn math. You need to unlearn that and learn, I can learn math, right? I can learn to read. I can learn to play basketball. I can learn these. We have to learn how to instill those beliefs, overcome that learned helplessness and bad attitudes and bad thinking. You also learn how to motivate yourself so that learning is something you want to do. It's pleasurable, right? It's effortless. It's not like, oh my God, I got to study. It's like, man, when do I don't want to stop, right? So you have to learn how to motivate yourself to do that, right? You also need to learn to set clear goals for learning so that you achieve your maximum potential. You're not just learning aimlessly. You're not just looking through the book, passing the words before your eyes. You have clear purposes and clear goals that you're trying to achieve. Fifth, you need to learn how to utilize your 3 brains, your 2 hemispheres, the 10 intelligences, right? And that helps you increase your learning potential by learning according to the way your brain has been programmed. You also need to learn how to manage your time effectively so that you use your time effectively and do things in less time with less effort because you use your time wisely. You also need to learn how to study effectively in order to reduce your stress in the amount of time it takes to master a subject. So if you learn and study properly, you really decrease the amount of time you have to prepare for tests, to write papers, to learn the material. You can do that much more quickly and effectively. If you learn how to memorize quickly and easily, so you never forget, right? That will definitely increase your ability to learn. So you need to learn how to learn. You need to learn how to memorize. 9, you need to learn to read effectively, right? You need to learn how to read effectively, quickly, with high comprehension, so that you understand and you retain what you read. You can read faster, you can read with greater understanding, and you remember more. You also need to learn how to power read, so you can master a whole book with like 1/4 the time that would take you even to read it. You can master that whole book with power reading, right? You also need to learn how to speed read, so that you could read a whole section within less than a minute. Right? You can skim through, find the important details, find the main points, and then go back and study. But you get the big picture. You can read a whole book in minutes instead of hours to quickly increase your ability to master a subject. You also learn how to take tests more effectively. So you're not stressed out. You can take the SAT, take the ACT, take your tests at school, take your final exams to increase your GPA, reduce your stress, increase your enjoyment, and actually multiply your ability to learn. You also need to learn how to communicate more effectively through writing and through speaking if you want to be successful in life, in your career, and academically. Right? You have to be able to learn. You have to be able to read and then take all that things that you've learned and then communicate that succinctly, accurately, effectively, so that you move other people to do what you want them to do. And then finally, you need to increase your creativity and your critical thinking skills because those are essential to success. And you can do it. You have what it takes, right, to be a genius. You have a brain, and your brain's functioning normally. You just have to learn how to do it. You were created with this incredible brain. You just simply have to learn the way your brain was designed to learn. And imagine the possibilities What are you willing to do to unleash your genius?